The engine hummed softly as I pulled up to the curb. As I put the car in park, Mason was already bouncing in his seat, his tiny feet tapping with excitement. His enthusiasm was contagious as he spoke endlessly about the new school year. His words clattered over one another, barely giving me time to take it all in. "Dad, did you know Mrs. Thompson moved? Jake said there's a new science lab at another school, and there's a legend about a hidden door behind the gym." I laughed, adjusting the rearview mirror to look at him. "A secret door? You think it's real?" Mason nodded so vigorously I thought his head might pop off. "Yes, and I'll be the first to find it." For a few seconds, I almost forgot, but my gut clenched. I knew what was coming. I didn't need to check the time because they were always here. Mason's voice grew quieter as he reached for the door handle. "Daddy, are you okay?" he asked, his tone curious but tinged with worry. I forced a smile. "Of course, buddy. Remember, it's your big day. Let's make it fantastic." I hurried out of the car, grabbing Mason's backpack and helping him out. The morning air was crisp, filled with the sounds of children laughing, parents giving last-minute reminders, and the occasional honk of an impatient driver. But nothing could overpower the one voice I didn't want to hear. Lucas. I turned. Sophie. My ex-wife stood there, exuding her usual air of superiority, just polite enough to seem civil, just condescending enough to remind me she thought she was in control. And beside her, Brandon, arms crossed as always, wearing that smug expression, like he was posing for a magazine cover. Sophie tilted her head in mock surprise. "What a surprise to see you here, Lucas." I kept my expression neutral. "Where else would I be? It's school drop-off, Sophie." She let out a small, insincere laugh, brushing invisible dust off her coat with perfectly manicured nails. "Naturally. I just assumed, given how busy you are, that you'd be late, or maybe preoccupied with other things." The morning's first jab. I didn't take the bait. Mason, blissfully unaware, tugged at my sleeve. "Dad, can I go say hi to Jake?" I ruffled his hair. "Go ahead, buddy. I'll see you after school." As Mason ran off, Sophie's syrupy voice returned. "Oh, and you remembered all his school supplies, right? I mean, I know things have changed for you after the divorce. I'd hate for Mason to go without." There it was, the passive-aggressive insult wrapped in fake concern. I met her gaze, saying nothing. Brandon chuckled, shaking his head like he already had all the confirmation he needed. "Hey, at least you're trying, even if you are spoiling him." My jaw tightened, but I held my composure. Sophie sighed dramatically. "Lucas, really, I'm just so proud of how you're handling things." Right. The usual game. She always knew how to phrase things just right, positioning herself as the rational, put-together one while subtly undermining me. And Brandon? He was just there to reinforce it. Proof that she had moved on to something better. I wasn't going to give them what they wanted. "Thanks for your concern, but I'm doing just fine." For a brief moment, Sophie's smile wavered. A tiny crack in her perfectly constructed mask. She recovered quickly, her voice dripping with artificial sincerity. "Mason is growing up so fast. Stability is important, don't you think?" Another jab. Another implication that I was failing as a father. Brandon, still standing there like a human prop, finally spoke. "Sophie and I were actually discussing something. We think it might be better if Mason spends more time with us during the school year. Things are just more structured on our end." There it was. Not just superiority, control. I tilted my head, pretending to consider it. Then I chuckled. "That's funny. I was just thinking how great it is that Mason gets to see real strength. Someone who doesn't have to tear others down to feel powerful." Brandon's smirk flickered, the first crack. Sophie's expression tightened. I locked eyes with her, my voice steady. I only want what's best for Mason. She blinked. For the first time I saw it, that glimmer of uncertainty. Before she could respond, Mason came running back, his cheeks flushed with excitement. "Dad! The secret door is real! Can we look for it later?" I smiled, all the tension melting away for a moment. "You bet, buddy." Sophie wasn't finished. She murmured, "Lucas, don't take this personally. We're all just trying our best." I turned back, keeping my voice light. "No need to make things awkward, Sophie." I let a small smile tug at my lips. "One last thing. Brandon has no business making remarks about parenting." Sophie's mouth parted slightly. Brandon's jaw tightened. I walked Mason to the school gates, his small hand in mine. "Dad," he asked suddenly, "why does Mom always talk like that?" I sighed, squeezing his hand gently. "She's just being herself." "Buddy?" As Mason ran toward the school doors, I glanced back. For the first time, Sophie and Brandon weren't as sure of themselves. Maybe they hadn't gotten under my skin as much as they thought. Maybe, for the first time, they were the ones off balance. And that was a feeling I could get used, too. I took a deep breath, unclenched my fists, and walked back to my car. Sophie and Brandon had perfected their routine. Subtle digs, smug confidence, their little power play. But today was different. I wasn't leaving with a knot in my stomach. I wasn't mentally replaying their words, dissecting every insult. No. Today, I saw something new. A tiny crack in their certainty. A flicker of doubt. I turned on the engine, a soft hum filling the air. For years, Sophie had controlled the narrative, framing our divorce as her triumphant new beginning while I was meant to be the struggling ex. But what if she was wrong? What if I was the one holding things together? I beat my fingers against the wheel, a small grin forming. They expected me to break, to be shaken. But today, I gave them nothing. As I pulled out of the parking lot, the sun glared off my windshield. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't affected by their words. I was fine. No, I was better than fine. I let my thoughts wander as I drove home, the house quiet when I entered. I kicked off my shoes, tossed my keys on the entry table, and poured myself a fresh cup of coffee. For too long, Sophie had dictated how I saw myself. Her words had been weapons, planting doubts, making me question my worth. And for the longest time, it had worked. But not today. I leaned against the counter, letting the steam from my coffee rise. Maybe it was time to rewrite the story. Because I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. And soon, they'd realize it too. Brandon wasn't only attempting to destroy me in front of my clients at the Invest VOR meeting, he was also attempting to discredit me before I could proceed by requesting reinforcements. So, I grabbed my phone and called the only person I knew who could take care of this: Alex. Lucas informed me that I was phoning, and he answered on the first ring. Because I mumbled, "I need you," hoping he would take a vacation at last to discreetly continue digging into anything for me, he replied, with no hint of humor left. I briefed him on Brandon's LLC's dubious questions. The paper made it apparent it was intended to harm my reputation, and after I was done, there was a lengthy silence. Alex blew out a low whistle. It's daring, but if he's genuinely sabotaging you with false allegations, we might be facing a serious case of defamation, not to mention fraud. I grinned when I heard that. He was attempting to misrepresent himself in business. That was just what I needed to hear. Do you want me to? Yes, I said, and I would like to know whether any of my clients are supporting him. I've been contacted. You got it. Give me a few days, and I'll have something substantial. I hung up the phone with a clarity I hadn't experienced in a long time. Brandon believed he was intelligent and untouchable. However, He had just committed the greatest error of his life, and I wasn't going to wait for Brandon to hit me once more. Instead of hitting first, I wrote a draft, email to my important business contacts. I wanted to directly address some false information that had been spread. Partners, beloved team, rumors about my business. You may have heard them. We have a solid financial position and are continuing to expand at a never-before-seen pace. Since openness is always my top priority, please contact me immediately. If you have any queries or issues, we have exciting updates ahead, and I look forward to sharing them with you soon. Reclining back in my chair, I knew this was a preemptive strike rather than a frontal assault, a means of thwarting Brandon's efforts before they established themselves. After 4 years of being on the defensive, something changed. Sophie and Brandon had controlled the narrative, but this time, I was one step ahead. They were following my rules, and they had no idea what was about to happen. The next morning, I grabbed my coffee and checked my laptop inbox. The responses to my email were more than reassuring. My business colleagues weren't just comforted, they were encouraging. Some even complimented me on my recent achievements and expressed excitement about the impending investor deal. Brandon's smear campaign had failed. He had attempted to sow doubt, but all he had accomplished was providing me with the perfect pretext to reaffirm my standing. It was time to escalate. I called Alex. "You have something?" he asked. "Oh, I have. More than something," I replied. Alex gave a hint of amusement. "Brandon's LLC is a joke. He lacks credibility. His backers in your industry are already losing interest." I grinned. "What about the report linking him to a public relations firm? The one that specializes in strategic reputation management? They're compensated to spread false information," Alex confirmed. "And you can guess whose name is on the invoice." "Bam," I said plainly. That was all I needed. An hour early for the investor meeting, that was exactly what I had planned. I was ready. I understood my business inside and out. By the time the investors arrived, I had already set the tone. Confidence, not desperation. As the presentation began, I didn't hold back. I guided them through the development of my business, our revenue growth, our market position, and the newly signed contracts. I provided them with proof, not just assurances, but outcomes. When the Q&A session arrived, an older investor named Carter leaned forward. "Lucas, there's been discussion on your company's instability, leadership challenges, financial concerns. I won't lie, there have been rumors." I nodded. "I've seen the rumors too." I took out a printed copy of the article and placed it in the middle of the table. The investor's eyes locked onto the page. "This piece was funded by a rival," I said. "But it wasn't just any rival. Carter spent the last few months trying to investigate my business, steal my contacts, and damage my reputation." Eyebrows rose. I pulled out another folder and passed around the PR firm's invoice, with Brandon's name on it. Silence. Then Carter chuckled. "Well, that's an interesting one." Evelyn, a perceptive investor, shook her head. "The fact that someone went this far to discredit you only increases my trust in your business. It means you're a threat." I nodded. "Precisely." And just like that, I flipped the narrative. I was no longer the struggling businessman. I was the underdog who had succeeded despite the odds. As the meeting ended, the investors shook my hand, confirming their commitment. The deal was mine.